And I'd like to tell you another story, if that's okay, because I love stories. And this is a true story. I was taking a taxi on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. I had to have a meeting with a very wealthy person for the yeshiva, and he told me to come on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. I took a taxi there, and the taxi guy tells me the following story, right? Because Israeli taxis are always the best. You can always get great stories from them, right? I used to be one of those guys who were like, how did all these rabbis manage to get stories? Like, I sat next to a guy on the plane and I made him religious. Like, I don't sit next to these guys on the plane. But anyway, so this happened to me. And it was a single guy, the taxi driver was a single guy, 45 years old. He says to me, tells me his whole life story, couldn't find a wife. 45 years old, never, couldn't find a wife. It was very, very difficult for him. And he says to me, I don't know what to do, which direction to turn, what should I do? So he said, what he did is he called up his rabbi. He didn't even look that religious, but he had a rabbi, which is bound down to our next shmooze, Be'ez Hashem, about having a rebbe. We'll talk about it. And he said, what should I do? And his rabbi told him, you know what you have to do, Moshe? Talk to God. Talk to God. Okay, so he figured, okay, no problem. So he started every single day, he started talking to Hashem. He said, at the beginning it was a little bit weird. It's like I'm talking to myself, but he said, I was talking to Hashem, and he said 3 weeks later he got engaged. Isn't that amazing? 3 weeks later, got engaged. Right? We're dealing over here, Rabbi Say, with the Koyach of Tefillah, that I think we have to, just like I said, we all know how to daven. We've all been davening our whole lives. Sometimes we need to just renew, like we ended off yesterday's share about the king. The music sometimes gets a little bit low, gets a bit shvach. So now we have to machazik it, right? There are no shortcuts in life. People think there are shortcuts in life. Sometimes there are shortcuts, but generally within Yonei Gashmias. For example, in theme parks, they have something called, I don't know if they have it in America, they probably do, a fast pass, right? Fast pass, right? In England they call it the easy pass, right? It's called easy, right? I think so. Basically, it allows people to go straight to the front, right? So there's different ways of doing it. If you have ADHD, if you're on Ritalin, whatever, all of a sudden everyone's admitting their problems. Anyway, so you're getting these fast pass, and you get straight to the, but there you are in Disneyland, with Kenai Nahora with lines going up, who knows where, and you go right in there. So yeah, there are sometimes shortcuts, but those are generally Gashmiya shortcuts. When it comes to Ruchnius, there's no real shortcuts. The same way that we daven when we were a kid, we should not be davening now. If we davened a certain way when we were 7 years old by shuckling away and looking at the setup, we shouldn't be davening that way now. We should be looking more into the words. We should be understanding more about what tefillah is. If we're davening the same way now as we davened when we were in 9th grade, we've got big problems. And I say the same thing in 5 years' time as well. If you're davening in 5 years the same way you're davening now, that means you never worked on it, right? And everything in life, and as we mentioned yesterday from the Gemara in Brachos, requires a lot of chizuk. And that's what tefillah requires, and that's how important it is. Now, Rabbi, so I want to tell you some more. We mentioned this a little bit yesterday, but I want to continue on this similar theme to the koyach of tefillah. Rabbi Yerucham in Das Torah says an incredible thing. And he brings a pasuk in Parshas Bereshis, where the pasuk tells us that the Rebbeinu Shalom, as we know, created the world 6 days, then came along Adam HaRishon on the last day, and then Shabbos the Rebbeinu Shalom stopped creating. Adam HaRishon wanted to eat something. The Torah tells us that Adam HaRishon davened to Hashem. Rashi brings it that Adam HaRishon davened to Hashem because he needed to eat. He was hungry. So what did he do? He davened, and all of a sudden sprouted beautiful, nice things that he was able to eat. Asks everyone the kasha. 1 second. Adam HaRishon was born on day number 6. Everything was already created. What do you mean davening? And where was all the fruits and the trees and everything that had previously been created before Adam HaRishon came into the world? Says Rabbi Yerucham in Das Torah, unbelievably sight. And he says as follows. The Rebbeinu Shalom created the potential. The Rebbeinu Shalom created the fruit, the vegetable, everything had the potential, it was all under the ground. But until you come and look for it, until you come and daven for it, until you ask, the Rebbeinu Shalom is not going to give it to you. And we see that from Adam HaRishon. We see this again and again from Adam HaRishon, that the Yesod is the Rebbeinu Shalom wants to give us so much. But you don't ask. And people are complaining, why don't I have A? Why don't I have B? Why don't I have C? So much! Where is it? What did you ask? Did you talk to Hashem? Did you have a relationship with the Rebbeinu Shalom? Because that's what it's all about. That's what a person has to realize. I'll tell you another modik zach. We know, we're learning Masechtas Makkos now, right? We're learning Masechtas Makkos. And we know, as you get there, Be'ez Hashem, the Gemara talks about this in Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, about a Kohen Gadol. That the person who kills someone, take a seat. A person that kills someone accidentally, What is the din of someone that kills someone accidentally? So he goes to the Ori Miklot until when? Till the Kohen Gadol dies. Okay? Says the Mishnah, Makkah Daf Yud Aleph, that in order to make sure, because you can imagine, if you were there, what would you be doing your whole time? You'd be davening that the Kohen Gadol dies, right? So the Mishnah tells us that the mothers of the Kohen Gadol would bring presents and give food so that they'd enjoy their time in Ori Miklot and they would not daven. Now ask yourself a kasha. Seriously? You're davening that the Kohen Gadol dies? We need the Kohen Gadol right now. Oh, but in the you see from here the koyach of tefillah. The koyach of a guy who accidentally killed someone and he's in the Orei Miklah, his davening can affect the Kohen Gadol who goes with a flav and a fnim into the Kodesh HaKadoshim to die. Why? Because he davened. I'll tell you another thing. On Yom Kippur, we say this once a year, the most incredible tefillahs. Unfortunately, a lot of people get a little bit distracted and people are a little bit agitated at that time. But at the end of Musaf, by the Chazoros HaShatz, we go through many, many tefillahs, right? After the sugya of achas, v'shtayim, whatever, the whole thing, and the whole marikoin, where there's a whole tefillah there about the Yehi Ratzon. And basically what the Siddur tells us is the Yehi Ratzon that the Kohen Gadol would say when he went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Now, he went into the Kodesh HaKadoshim for a very short amount of time. He didn't spend too long over there, right? Why? It was very dangerous, right? Chazal tell us that so the Kohen Gadol that wasn't worried, they would put chains around his leg so that they could wait outside, and sometimes he died in there and they pulled him out. So he was literally in there for mamash. I don't know. I don't think Chazal tell us the amount of time, but I imagine it's for a few minutes at most. At most a few minutes. He did a couple of things in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, said a tefillah and left. What was the tefillah that he said? Now, could you imagine the Kohen Gadol on the holiest day of the year? All of Klal Yisrael are doing tshuva. He's in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the holiest place in the world, on the holiest day, the holiest man. Everything is there. What tefillah could he say? What tefillah would you imagine him saying? And I haven't got a machzah with me now because I didn't bring one, but I'll give you one line of what the machzah tells us, the Yiratzon that the Kohen Gadol said when he was in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He said, amongst a few tefillahs, he said, and don't let the tefillah of the traveler go by. What does that mean? What's pshat? So Chazal tells us an incredible thing. Listen to this, rabbis. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Can you imagine if you owned a field, and the way of making parnasa, the only way of supporting your family, was to sell your apples and your oranges. You have apple trees, you have oranges trees, and you go once a week to the market, you sell them, you make your money, and for that you could buy bread, milk, and cheese, whatever it is for the family, for the kids. So your whole way of supporting your family is by selling apples and oranges. There you are, right? Picture the scene. You've got your wagon, right, which is being led by the horse, piled up with boxes and boxes of apples and oranges. This is going to be a parnasa for the week. Without this, you're not going to have food. And you're about to start the journey, and in the corner of your eye, you see the dark clouds. And you're like, uh-oh, it's going to rain. Now, if it rains, there's no way I'll be able to travel into the city. I won't be able to sell my apples and oranges. I won't have a parnasa. My kids are going to go hungry. So from the bottom of your heart, you turn to the Rebbeinu Shem and say, Rebbeinu Shem, please, stop the rain. I don't want it to rain. Please let it not rain. That tefillah that you say, the Kohen Gadol has to go in to the Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom HaKippurim to mevatel your tefillah. Because we need rain. Klal Yisrael needs rain for everyone else. But that little tefillah, that you little guy, who are you already? You sell apples and oranges. You're not some big tzaddik. You're a regular normal guy. But that tefillah that comes from the depths of your heart can affect everything. And the Kohen Gadol has to go in to the Kodesh HaKadoshim on the holiest day of the year to mevatel your tefillah. That is the koyach tefillah, Rabbi say. That is the koyach tefillah. And I want to tell you this. I want to tell you a very interesting thing, actually. There was a study, okay, that was made by Dr. Randolph Byrid. Now, Dr. Randolph Byrid was a staff cardiologist at the University of California Medical School. Now, what he did was, he actually studied 393 patients in one of the units in the San Francisco General Hospital, and all of the patients were given state-of-the-art treatment. In addition, half of them, chosen at random, were prayed for by prayer groups across America. Importantly, none of the doctors, nurses, or patients knew who was being prayed for. it was a double-blind aspect. So there you are. You've got a study of patients who all have the same problem. Half of them are secretly being prayed for by people in America, and half of them are not. Okay, this is a goy. The results highly favored the prayed for patients who had fewer deaths, fewer instances of resuscitation, and less need for attachment to breathing machines and antibiotics and all other things of many of them I can't personally pronounce because they're on the medical school. According to Larry Dossey, right, MD, commenting on the study of the Atlantis, the imaginary newsletter of surgical technique, it would undoubtedly, the outcome was so significant if the method being investigated had been a new drug or surgical technique, it would have undoubtedly been absolutely a scientific breakthrough. We're talking about a goy who understood the koyach of tefillah, who understood when people pray, it changes everything. And that's what a person has to realize. And that's what we're doing over here, and that's what a person has to try to really, give in to himself. The Briskerov was baking matzahs in Yerushalayim many, many years ago. And the following Maisa, somebody once told him, a certain Rebbe was baking his matzah with tremendous chumras, with all the dikduki mitzvahs, mamish baking the matzahs with every chumrah and every hiddah that you could possibly do on Pesach, right? And at the same time, there was a simple yid that saw this tzaddik, this big Rebbe, and he was baking matzahs with such a slava, such a geschmack, with such a dikduki mitzvahs. He says, I wish I could do it my way. I wish I could also do it that way. I don't know all his dikduki mitzvahs. I don't know all his hiddurim and all his chumras. I don't know. So he went into the corner of the room, and he davened from the depths of his heart. He said, Rabbeinu Shalom, I'm a simple yid. What do I know about making matzahs? I know how to do it, but I don't know all the kavanas and all these, these dikduki mitzvahs and chumras. I'm begging of you, Rabbeinu Shalom, give me the siyata d'shmaya that my matzahs come out just like his. The Rebbe, who was there at the time, heard this and came over to the yid afterwards and said, can I please swap my matzahs with your matzahs? That tefillah that you uttered was so real, was so choshev. That's why it's important. The Reb Chanach Henoch of Alexander would once say that the British speak English, no? The French speak French, the Russians speak Russian. So he said, Reb Chanach Henoch of Alexander, he brings down a Shor B'Tefillah, the heart has its language, and the heart's language is the language of tefillah. That's why a person has to realize that it's the language that we have. The Gemara in Nidud of Ayin tells us that if a person wants to get wealth, there are people in the world that want to become wealthy. There are people that want to be very, very wise. They want to be wise people that want to know a lot. What do? Says the Gemara in Yumad of Ayin, turn to the Rabbeinu Shalom. Because the Gemara is telling us the only method we have of gaining whatever you want is by the Rabbeinu Shalom. That's what we said yesterday. That's what Lashon Avodah. It's an Eved. We're an Eved. We're totally subjugated to our master, to the Rabbeinu Shalom. The Heilige Baal Shem Tov asked one of his Talmidim to take on guarding the winemaking production that he was doing from the harvest of the grapes all the way until the finishing product. So one of his Talmidim set out in the late summer and spent over 2 months ensuring that the highest standard of kashrus on the wine manufacturing was there. He stood over the people that picked the grapes and the people that trapped it in the vats, and they protected the wine from harm and all sorts of things. All of his work came to nothing when a non-Jewish Cossack helped himself to some of the wine right after they arrived in Mezhbish. The Talmud was devastated. He had so much effort. He'd done so much. He tried to protect the wine in every possible way. And he asked the Baal Shem Tov, Rebbe, how do I explain this? What's the pshat that the Rebbeinu Shem did this to me? I did so much. The Heilige Baal Shem Tov explained that he devoted too much energy to guarding the wine, and you left no room for asking Hashem's help. He said you should have invested greater effort in davening to the Rebbeinu Shalom to watch over the wine. And we'll end with this Gemara Kamaisa, how a Yid, one came to the Heilige Baditsheva, Kedusha Stevi, and he asked to please daven that he has a child. And the Baditsheva said no. And the person was taken aback. Rebbe, I want a child, please. No. How could you, Rebbe, please? I've tried everything. You're my last hope. Without you, I've tried doctors and I've tried professionals and I've tried other scholars. Rebbe, you're my own, please. No, the Rebbe said no. So the guy got really upset. He walks out the room. He goes over to the corner and starts davening to Rebbeinu Shalom. But the Baditsheva looked at him and said, now you're going to have a child. As long as you're relying on yourself, relying on other people, it's not going to happen. But if you rely on the Rabbeinu Shalom, if you put all your trust in Hashem, because you realize where everything comes from, changes everything. And Be'ez Hashem, tomorrow we shall continue.